Just before noon on the 5th of May 1905, a mining engineer named William Watson Perry was walking through the exhibition gardens adjacent to the Carlton Gardens on the northern edge of the city of Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. He was accosted by a stranger who spoke to him saying, "Hello, old chap, I want to go to the corner of Spring and Victoria Streets. Is this the track?" Watson replied that he thought it was. The man then said, "I'm staying out tonight," and muttered something else which Watson did not manage to hear. "I can't help that," Watson said. The stranger then asked, "Will you have a drink?" and brought out a dark-coloured bottle from under his coat. Watson refused, saying, "I don't touch it." With that, the stranger walked away. Perry described him to police that night as being about 40 years of age, 5'7", medium build, fair complexion, fair beard, and moustache turning grey, and with very heavy eyebrows. He was wearing a brown felt hat and dark sack suit. Shortly after about 12 noon, John Mulgrove, the 44-year-old head gardener in the Carlton Gardens, was busy at work weeding and watering plants when a stranger approached as he wheeled his barrow on the Victoria Street side of the gardens. The man seemed friendly enough as he addressed Mulgrove, although he was unknown to the gardener. He was well dressed and appeared to have been recovering from a drinking spree, according to Mulgrove. The description given varied in some details to Perry's. He said the man was about 35, about 5'8", with a brown beard and moustache, wearing a blue-black sack coat, dark trousers and waistcoat, and with a black boxer hat. "Hello, gardener, have a drink. Here's a bottle of beer. It will do to drink with lunch." The man produced a quart-sized bottle with its label scratched off from under his coat and placed it by Mulgrove's wheelbarrow. No doubt surprised but pleased with the unexpected gift, Mulgrove took the bottle to the gardener's tool house elsewhere in the gardens. The structure was concealed behind a thick planting of pittosporum. Mulgrove entered and placed the bottle upon a ledge. The three men employed by the City Corporation to tend to the gardens had assembled in the shed for their lunch. Mulgrove's two assistants were Richard Barry, a 45-year-old single man who lived with his mother in Cambridge Street, Collingwood, and a young man of 24 named John Thomas Brick. This day they were joined by 32-year-old Constable David Lancaster, who was on duty in the gardens. Pointing to the bottle, Mulgrove remarked, "Well, Dick, old boy, you may have a drop of beer for your dinner today." He then explained the story of how he came by the beer. Barry uncorked the bottle and Mulgrove smelt the contents. He thought it had a queer odour and thought it may be flat. Barry also smelled it. Then he poured some of the liquid into a small enamel pannikin and tasted it. He declared that it was good English ale and drank the whole pannikin. Mulgrove drank only a little, deciding he didn't like the taste. Constable Lancaster took a couple of mouthfuls and only drank to be sociable when pressed by the others to oblige them. Brick was a teetotaler, so did not have any of the beer. Barry swigged more than the other two, taking another quaff of the beer. 2 minutes later, Richard Barry's head dropped forward onto his chest and, with his legs doubling up, collapsed. The other two who had drunk some of the beer began to check on their mate, when they too began to feel very ill. Mulgrove and Lancaster had picked Barry up and dragged him outside into the fresh air and splashed some water on his face, rubbed his hands, and called loudly in a bid to revive him. Seeing he was unresponsive, Mulgrove hastily mixed up some salt in water to use as an emetic. Attempts were made to force the emetic past Barry's clenched teeth, but they were unable to do so. The other two then swallowed the mixture and made themselves vomit. Brick went to find a cab, but unable to find one, instead a furniture van was requisitioned, and the three stricken men quickly taken to the Melbourne hospital. Mulgrove was feeling dizzy, but was not as bad as Constable Lancaster, who he had to help onto the van. At hospital, Barry had his stomach pumped first and sent to a ward, where he died about 15 minutes later. Mulgrove and Lancaster were treated next, and also admitted to the wards. Only half the bottle had been finished and was taken to the hospital by the men. The The bottle was sealed and sent for chemical analysis, along with fluid from Barry's stomach in a jar. Dr. Mollison, on opening Barry's stomach for examination, detected the faint odour of prussic acid. Barry's stomach lining was red and irritated by the poison, and his liver, kidneys and lungs were congested. A white froth was present in his windpipe and around his mouth. Analysis of the remaining beer later confirmed the suspicion. The beer had been adulterated with potassium cyanide. The government analyst reported that there would have been about 3.5 grains of cyanide in the beer which Barry drank. 2 grains, he added, would have been enough to prove fatal. An inquest opened 2 days later to review the events which had led to Richard Barry's death. The circumstances as related were provided by Brick, the man who had not drunk any of the beer, while the other 2 were still in hospital recuperating. The coroner adjourned the inquest to give police time to further investigate, but as time passed it became less and less likely that the man who gave the gardeners the poisoned beer would ever be identified. Even a reward of £100 offered by the Victorian government failed to snare the culprit. Mulgrove was taken by police to see a man who matched the description on the 18th of July, and although he said he closely resembled the man, he was not positive it was the same individual. On the 27th of July, the inquest was closed, with a finding that Barry had died from the effects of drinking cyanide of potassium dissolved in beer. In late August 1905, a man whom Sergeant Jones of Footscray believed matched the description of the man who gave Mulgrove the beer, was admitted to the Yarra Bend Lunatic Asylum. It is not known if this man was ever seriously considered by detectives to be a suspect. No arrest was ever made in the case, and it was never resolved whether the man was a sadist who set out to poison some random person, somebody of unsound mind, or whether a bottle which had contained a poison had inadvertently been refilled with beer and unknowingly handed off. In March 1906, a young man from Collingwood named Thomas Utting was taken to the same Melbourne hospital, suffering the effects of an irritant poison. His mate, John O'Neill, had given him a powder mixed in water as a cure for his alcoholism. It was believed by some that this may have explained the Carlton Gardens case. A poison was accidentally added to beer instead of some quack remedy. O'Neill's cure was to add tartar emetic to the beer to make drinkers sick and, by aversion, prevent them from desiring to drink beer. He had been unaware that an overdose of the powder could be lethal. Although he was charged with administering poison, he was discharged without penalty. James Mulgrove died in hospital at the age of 77 on the 9th of October 1937. David Lancaster died at his home in Ascot Vale, aged 67, on the 24th of January 1941. John Thomas Brick passed away at Parkville on the 11th of May 1975 at the age of 94. Christopher Walter Costello, the man whom Sergeant Jones suspected, was again sent off to Yarra Bend in October 1906 as being of unsound mind. He died at the age of 69 in 1929.